one evening a woman was flying with her family for a vacation, there was a great commotion on the plane. Some passengers were talking loudly, while others were looking around with worried eyes. The woman was sitting by the window, lost in the dark sky outside. This vacation, which they had been planning for a long time, was very important to her. It was a short break from her busy work life and a chance to spend peaceful moments with her family. As the plane passed through the clouds, it suddenly started shaking. The lights went out and all the illumination disappeared. The sound of panicking passengers echoed in the dark. The woman tightly held her mother's hand, who was also panicking. "Everything will be all right. Don't worry," she whispered. At that moment, a scream was heard on the plane, and everyone fell silent for a moment. Her heart was pounding, and she had difficulty breathing. At that moment, she feared she would lose all her loved ones. After a while, the lights came back on, but the plane felt like it had transitioned to another world. The sky was completely dark and starless. There was a strange silence on the plane. The woman noticed some passengers with strange, frightening expressions on their faces. Some were looking at each other with uneasy and suspicious eyes. "What is happening here?" the woman murmured to herself. The plane suddenly shook violently, and the woman found herself almost flying in the air. She closed her eyes in fear and clung tightly to her family. Suddenly, something happened, and when she opened her eyes, she found herself in a hospital room. Everything around her was cold and sterile. She tried to understand how she had come here after the chaos on the plane. "Where am I?" she thought, feeling a deep unease inside. Strange things started happening in her room in the hospital. The door closed on its own, shadows moved, and mysterious whispers were heard. The woman saw an old feather lying on the bed. The feather had an ancient, dark symbol on it. She had never seen this symbol before, but as she looked at it, she felt a deep chill. "I have to get out of here," she thought. The fear in her heart mixed with curiosity. While trying to understand the strange events in her room, the hospital staff were also behaving strangely. Doctors and nurses were hovering over her, but none of them spoke to her. The woman decided to walk around the hospital corridors and noticed a few other patients disappearing among the shadows. These patients seemed to be trapped in the hospital like her. "I wonder if they are experiencing the same things," she wondered. As she wandered through the corridors, old photographs hanging on the walls caught her attention. These photographs seemed to belong to the hospital's past, and each had strange, eerie faces. Hoping to find more information, she decided to descend into the depths of the hospital. She found the remnants of an old hospital building, crumbling walls, rusty tools, and mysterious shadows that seemed to have been there for a long time. Finally, she found a file that caught her attention. The file showed that the hospital had hosted many experiments and malicious treatments in the past. This file explained that the hospital was spiritually affected and had imprisoned people. "How can this be possible?" the woman asked herself. As she flipped through the pages of the file, she read the stories of people who had been subjected to experiments, and a deep sadness filled her heart. The desperation and fear of the people intensified her own fear. After reading the file, the woman realized that the hospital was in a temporary parallel world and began to understand that the only way to escape was to descend into the dark corners of the hospital. As she descended deeper, she encountered the shadows she had seen before. These shadows seemed to be trying to help her, but at the same time they were frightening her. The woman continued to move forward with determination. Along the way, she heard the whispers of the patients, each trying to tell her something. Some spoke of lost loved ones, others of the horrific experiences they had endured. Finally, she came to a dark door within the hospital and opened it, finding herself back in the real world. When she opened her eyes, she was back on the plane. Everything seemed to have returned to normal. Looking at her family, she realized they had experienced the same fear. However, everyone was safe and sound. As she hugged her family, tears streamed down her face. "We're safe now," she whispered, as the woman left the hospital and returned to the real world. She looked back for a moment and saw the old state of the hospital. At that moment, she realized that the mysterious entities in the hospital had not followed her. However, she felt a deep fear and uncertainty, thinking that the passengers who'd spent the night in the hospital were still trapped there. Maybe I should do something for them, she thought. But for now, she just wanted to enjoy the peace of being with her family. Take care. See you.